So everyone understands the issues with Spider-Man comics at the moment. Myself and a bunch of other creators have made countless videos on these comics and why they're performing really badly. But I'm here to tell you that it's not getting any better. Because today we're going to be tackling the new comic in the Amazing Spider-Man run by Zeb Wells, which is issue 50, which sees the return of the Green Goblin once and for all. There is one major issue in the writing that I think trumps everything else and kind of makes this comic unbearable. But before we do get into that, I want to urge you guys to subscribe to the channel and join the best Spider-Man community in the entire world. We are on our mission to try and break through to Marvel Editorial, so join the movement, join the community. We're so close to 30,000 subscribers. Let's try and push for that goal. But with that being said, let's get straight into this. For some context, if you're not caught up, Norman Osborn and Peter Parker have been working together with each other since the start of this run. So for 50 issues, these two characters have been getting along, working together and even fighting villains together as Spider-Man and the Gold Goblin. At first, a lot of people, including myself, didn't like this decision by Wells, as it kind of undermined everything that Peter and Norman had been through earlier on in their lives. For example, obviously Norman killing Gwen Stacy, and a bunch of other stuff that has happened between Peter and Norman in the past of the series. But slowly, over time, I felt like the chemistry between Norman Osborn and Peter Parker became quite entertaining, and it actually became a highlight of the book. Even though some of the issues would really drag, the Peter and Norman stuff was becoming quite good. I've even gone on record saying that if Zeb Wells gets the return of the Green Goblin right, that it could actually sort of salvage this run somehow. But the fact of the matter is, they haven't. Any chance of consequence they could have given Peter Parker, any chance at change within his character that they could have built upon is non-existent. So let's cut to the chase. During this issue, Peter obviously finds out that Norman is the Green Goblin after his sins were returned to him about 10 issues ago. Norman tried to hide it for as long as possible, but the Green Goblin eventually overpowered him and a brawl between both of them broke out. Despite the dialogue between both of them being pretty good and entertaining along with the fight scenes, the problem arises from one passage by Peter. It says in these couple of panels, "I've seen it all before, Norman. Every one of your moves. You're so predictable. Why do you think I took this job? No matter what I said, no matter how hard I tried, I never trusted you." Now at first, this dialogue sounds pretty good. We're learning that no matter how good their relationship got, they could never actually move on from the trauma of both of their pasts. We are learning that no matter how well their relationship was handled leading up to this moment, these characters could never trust each other because of the shared history that they have together, which makes a lot of sense at first. But I see this as more of a backtrack than anything. Wells has made it very clear that throughout this run, Peter and Norman were moving away from their past and actually shared a decent connection together, and Peter should suffer the consequences of that. Having Peter tell Norman that he never trusted him at all makes Peter look like an incompetent idiot. If Peter never trusted Norman this whole time, as he suggests in this panel, then why was he so willing to work with him, fight alongside him, and trust him this entire time? Peter has told Norman on several occasions that he trusts him, even in the same issue. So this doesn't make any sense. And what I think genuinely would have made this moment better is if Peter told Norman that he's actually trusted him and that he's heartbroken by his betrayal. That way, it doesn't make Peter look like an idiot, but rather it taps into a consequence for the character. Maybe Peter now develops trust issues because of this. Maybe an arc reflecting on how Peter trusts people around him springs off from this story. Peter shifting the blame back to Norman is unbearably coming off as an "I told you so" moment, when Peter clearly was written earlier in this same series that he was fond on Norman, that he saw them as partners. Heck, there's even a moment earlier in the series where Peter literally says, and I quote, "The more I work with you, the more I recognize something familiar. The Norman Osborn I first met. The one who treated me like a son. I'm beginning to think that might be the real you." Which makes the hypocrisy of this issue even more prevalent. And Peter should suffer the consequences of this and should take responsibility of his actions. I actually want to link back to something Stan Lee said about the character a few years back.
I had not read any other superheroes who very often felt they wished they could quit being a superhero because it's not a normal life and he's miserable and maybe he's not doing the right thing. I made him a guy who is very introspective. He questions Why am I doing this? I gave him a guilt complex. He felt his uncle had died because he hadn't captured this original burglar who ended up killing his uncle. So he was riddled with neuroses and riddled with worries and doubts.
Stan Lee originally wrote Spider-Man as a character that was guilty, conscious of every decision, would take it on the chin and would deal with it. If this same story was written by Stan Lee in the 60s, Peter's reaction here is completely different. He doesn't blame Norman in this instant. He doesn't tell him that he never trusted him. He would blame himself. Stan Lee's Spider-Man would blame himself for being so naive, admitting that he trusted him and it was all his fault. Obviously, we don't know what stories are going to follow from this. Maybe Peter does end up blaming himself. But this one line of dialogue made me so angry because it's telling us that everything that we've been reading for the last few years hasn't been Peter's genuine thoughts and feelings. And it makes Peter look like a bumbling idiot when the Goblin eventually does return. Because if Peter never trusted Norman and knew this was going to happen, why did he even become friends with him in the first place? And this is why Marvel doesn't understand Spider-Man. They don't understand that Peter is conscious of these decisions. A Peter Parker written by a Jerry Conway or a Stan Lee or even a Dan Slott, I feel like would have reacted differently in this situation. And this is why in modern day, Marvel editorial and writers who tackle this character don't know what they're doing. Zeb Wells is a great writer, but how he's handled Spider-Man has been by far the worst I've seen in a while. If you like my videos on reviewing modern Spider-Man comics, you can check out my video here, which focuses in on how they're handling Mary Jane at the moment. If you enjoy my content, then consider supporting the channel and becoming a member from literally 99 pence a month. And shout out to all the current channel members. You guys are absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care and peace.